everyone. Welcome to Gaming the System in 2022. I believe this is our first live episode of the year, and we've got quite an unusual and exciting one because we've got a guest on, Mill, who has been making a game called Library Labyrinth that is a feminist board game about historical and fictional heroines defeating terrors that are escaping from books. So alongside with Jem and Caroline, and it looks like Jess has just appeared. A wild Jess has appeared.
Perfect timing.
Hello. I know.
timing.
I just suddenly was like, I should get in. But
You haven't missed much.
Flawless timing. You missed our epic intro music. That's all. But you can look
It's pretty
at that
epic.
later. So, Mill and/or Jess, what is this game, and what is it?
I've got it here. This is Jess has got one too. There we go.
Shiny.
This is our
I
fancy
know.
prototype. Library Labyrinth. It's a board game that we've been working on since.
has Mill frozen?
Oh, have I frozen? No, am I right? It's a board game we've been working on since May 2020. And it's set in a cursed library. As you said, all the terrors and horrible things have escaped from their books. And so you form a team of famous fictional and historical women who are going to help you capture the monsters and put them back in their books where you belong. But it's not that easy because the curse is still travelling around the library, causing chaos and at every turn. So that's the sort of the potted version. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll consider that our introduction to the episode. So I want to bring it back to Mill and Jess. What is your gaming history, and when did your feminism begin to intersect with your gaming? Jess, would you like to go first?
Ooh, straight in with the serious questions.
Oh yeah.
So I think I've probably been properly board gaming, 15, 20 years or so, which makes me feel really old. Basically at university it was okay, let's get out Carcassonne, let's get out, the bottles of wine, some cheese and nibbles, because we were seriously sophisticated at university. It might have been incredibly cheap wine, but still, so it's things like that. And and I remember soon after graduating, having people round to play Battlestar Galactica, the board game, which was like brand new. It was like, this is brilliant. And, I remember one session where it was 9 of us, and my ex had a PowerPoint presentation on how to play the game. And it was, it was fabulous. Yeah. So it's like, so what I really liked was actually less things, less the really long immersive games, but relatively quick, relaxed games where you're sitting there with some good friends, you've got some coffee or you've got something to drink, and you're like, hey, let's just play something quite straightforward. The types of games I grew up with were traditional card games, so I played a lot of Rummy. I mean, a serious amount of Rummy, and Rummy 500. I remember that being one of those things that I did with my dad. We'd sit there, play Rummy, get up to 500. It was the version where you could get loads of cards. So you could also have minus points as well. And, really, really loved that. Some of my, my childhood memories, my teenage memories of that. So I think when I was thinking about board games, I was like, okay, what do I really want to make a game about? Because I'm interested in stuff that matters to me. So the first game I made was a couple of years ago, and it was this one called Disarm the Base, which was based on an experience that some friends of mine had where they actually did disarm a base. They obviously got taken to court. They were acquitted, but it was like a proper direct action, real grassroots activism stuff. I was like, that would be a great board game. So after that, I was thinking, what, how do you beat that? What other stuff needs to be in board games? So I was thinking about, making something about democracy and voting, and that's really tricky to get in a board game.
We tried
it. We tried it. Well, the main problem is that if you're trying to do really cool voting systems, no one wants to do that much maths at the end of the game.
Nobody's interested in a board game about the D'Hondt system, are they?
Here we go, the D'Hondt method in board gaming. So it's like super difficult. But I was like, hang on, actually, there are so many board games that don't have really interesting feminist characterism, and also don't have some of these, because I'm really into books. I have, I think I've read quite a lot of classics. There was a time when I was like, basically things which were published before about 1900 and are considered classics, I've probably read. Things published after 1975, I'm like, no.
Culturally irrelevant.
Exactly. Not a clue.
Handily, all the ones that are now out of copyright.
Exactly. Me and Project Gutenberg online, where you can get the free out of copyright stuff. Yeah. That's a tab which is constantly open on my the iPad, because I just get a lot from there. So I was like, oh, hang on, it would be really cool to have these. And I think the original thought was, what if we had some of these really cool people helping each other out, basically joining forces, working out how you'd get from one thing to another, and from that, developed the core concept, which has stayed the same, which is basically, what if you had big, scary literary monster like, Dracula, big bad wolf or whatever, who would you get to beat it? So it's basically one of those, who's going to win in a fight type things, just in a very cultural, literary sense.
This is Shark versus Bear, isn't it? Isn't that the one that they do?
Exactly. Ada Lovelace versus Dracula.
I've played a handful of rounds, and you really have captured and distilled that very essence of the shark versus bear. It really does. You kind of feel that as you play through the game. So I'm excited for all of us to have a playthrough at some point. Mill, how about you? Your gaming history, and when did your feminism interact?
I guess kind of similar to Jess. So again, I played a lot of card games with my granddad when I was growing up. So a lot of Beat Your Neighbour, things like that. And yeah, I played sort of the standard Monopoly and things like that with my sister. And I got a copy of Labyrinth when I was about 8 years old. And we've been playing that in my family every Christmas for the last many years. And then I guess it sort of, I grew out of it a little bit when I was a teenager, and then when I was at uni, kind of got back into it. Bit of Risk, bit of Cluedo. Rapido made it to the table alarmingly often. Lots of fun when you've had a few drinks. And then, yeah, just sort of carried on playing games after uni. I moved into computer games for a while. I played a lot of Diablo, a lot of World of Warcraft, that sort of thing. All the Morporgs, and then a couple of years ago, I really started getting more into board gaming. Started going to board gaming festivals and things like that, and then I started working for a board game cafe in February 2020 when they first opened, which was really bad timing. So yeah, we opened, and then a month later we closed. And then we opened for, I think, about 5 months over the course of 18 months, which was a real shame. But it did mean that I was furloughed, which meant that I could help Jess create this, which was lovely. So it gave me this great opportunity, even though it was a bit of a sad time. And yeah, I guess in terms of the feminism side of things, I guess things like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, that was when I kind of really started to become conscious of that kind of, I don't want to say the divide, but you guys talk about this a lot, so you know exactly what I mean. the sort of just the attitudes to women playing games and things like that. I didn't come across it loads, but every now and then, and you would sort of go, I don't know about that, and and then sort of noticing it more in board games and things, that there weren't those kind of strong female characters. All of the armor was skimpy bikinis, and you're like, that's no use in a fight. All that kind of thing
Won't
just made
anything up.
No, exactly. That's not going to protect me against that sword. It might be magic, but maybe I can just distract them. That'll be fine, you know. So yeah, I think that was sort of where that first sort of started to hit me, and then noticing that wasn't in a lot of games. There wasn't that representation. And not just for women, there weren't ever really non-binary characters, or there wasn't LGBTQ communities represented. There wasn't disabled communities represented, and that was another thing that we're really trying to kind of make sure that representation is kind of across the board in this game. Obviously, women is our primary focus. We're all women, and we don't feel like we can tell the stories of people whose stories aren't ours, so but we can certainly give them some representation, make people go, oh, that person's like me, which I think is a thing that people have said about Disney films and stuff as well, that kind of when you're growing up and you see those characters and you go, well, none of these people are representative of me. And then things like Moana and things came out, and everyone went, oh, there's a character that looks like me now, great.
So and there's that new one that's out that I've only had the internet for one day, and I hadn't had the internet basically for 2 months before, and so I'm now desperate to catch up. And Encanto seems to be the thing that everyone's like, you've got to watch it.
Yeah,
it's excellent.
It's
excellent.
It's great.
Yeah,
it is great. I mean, we've had it on quite a lot in our house, because I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
So you're a bit sick of it now.
I really don't want to talk about Bruno. I have it's just too much.
It's much better than Frozen.
It's much better than Frozen.
I never understood the hype around Frozen, really.
I think no, go ahead, Caroline.
Oh, well, I just wanted to ask a question, because you mentioned that you were able to help develop the game because of the pandemic and being furloughed, and I was just sort of wondering how much the pandemic has. I was going to say, how much did it make this difficult? But now I'm starting to work. Did it help if you were furloughed and people were able to?
In a way, it sort of did help, because it gave me so much more. Like, I had that free time to work on a different project, to work on something that I was really passionate about, and yeah, it meant that we had time to kind of arrange play tests and things at times that I wouldn't have been able to do when I was at work, because we joined a lot of like playtesting groups and festivals and events that were kind of worldwide events, and so we were up until 2 a.m. trying to play with people in America, things like that. So we did do a lot of playtesting at weird times of day, so that was great, actually. And it also really helped us like broaden our team, because Jess and I grew up together, so we've known each other since we were like 10 or so, I think.
Okay.
Like
it's a long time.
But then we've moved to like different areas in the country, so I'm down on the south coast, Jess is up in Reading. It's it's not easy for us to get together.
It's not that far away. I mean, it's still
it's not easy to get together like once a week, but on with everybody kind of getting so used to video chats and things, and then our artist is up in Manchester and our art director is in London, so it's been really nice to kind of be able to do that with such a disparate group of people around the country, and just kind of go, well, actually we can bring in experiences from a lot of these different places and a lot of these different people. So I think it's been really nice, actually, to be able to build that team that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So and Jess and I are like,
we've never met, we've never done this in person. We started doing this during the pandemic, so this is I get that completely.
I've been in the same room with Caroline once.
Wow.
That was at a conference.
Wow.
And so but the beauty of this, I've managed to find an artist in Indonesia to do some art for a project I'm working on, and so it's just awesome to find all this disparate talent.
Yeah.
We mentioned Encanto, which I think is a perfect parallel to what this game is trying to do. Because really, at the core of this is representation. Seeing people that you never see in any form of media, let alone games. I recognised Mary Seacole from GCSE or A-level history, I think.
Where's my card? There you go. Nice picture.
Got it handy.
And just instantly makes you go, these names that you go, there are incredible stories attached, and they can be found just so you look at that card and it just says the name and like a few little attributes, and it instantly makes you want to go, oh, it sounds awesome just from that. And I think what Encanto has proved is that it just seeing it is magic on its own. And then when you add the depth to it, that's where the true awesomeness comes from. And I think that's what you guys are capturing with this. And there's an opinion about feminists is that we're all grumpy, we're all man haters, we don't like fun, we just want to go, no more banter, no more joking, you can't do anything with some of the fun. But feminism can make things so much better, and representation makes things so much better, and you don't have to be perfect in order to make something wonderful, which and shows the representation in some way, because it's better to have representation and make a few mistakes than just go, I will just stick with the straight, white, cisgender man and just have that. That's the safe neutral.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So obviously, I mean, we're coming at this from the fact that we're all British. So there are 4 of us on the core team. 3 of us are white. We're all female. We're all, I think I'm sort of safe in saying, we're all university educated. There's a certain like, this is a game about books, etc. So although we've got some diversity, we're not like a worldwide team. So we have made sure, when we're looking at the characters, we've made sure that when we're talking about someone who's outside of our own experience, we're like, okay, right, let's just go and ask somebody whether that's how it should be.
Yeah.
For example, there was some Japanese characters. So I had a conversation with someone about 6 months ago or so from Japan and said, look, we were thinking of including these Japanese characters. And they said, that one's great. That one's great. Why have you got that person in? Nobody knows who that person is. And I'm like, oh, but it seemed like the right person. That's what came up on Project Gutenberg.
Yeah.
So they were like, no, actually, you need this person. And I was like, oh, that is actually really, really interesting and really cool. And it was obviously somebody who is from Japan knows that. Someone who's sitting at home doing some desktop research doesn't know that. So it's the sort of thing where, yeah, I mean, absolutely getting the representation, but not being afraid to ask, because it's very cool that we've gotten that from the team we can look at this and go, okay, yes, Mary Seacole's going to have this sort of shades on her face, and but even there, we went to the Mary Seacole Trust and said, oh, does this look right? And they said, yeah, that's quite cool. And we had a really good couple of conversations with their youth council, who are a bunch of 15-year-olds mainly, were they? Yeah, and it's like, oh, they were excellent, actually, because it's a bit like, right, we're thinking of this and that. And they were like, yeah, what about this?
Or we could do it this way, which would be good.
They got really interested in like the mental health side as well. And they were that, one of the terrors that escapes from the book is anxiety. And that, like, everybody loves that one. The youth committee just went mad for that. They were like, this is exactly what this, that is a terror. And it's so satisfying when you defeat it.
I love the idea that you're looking for sort of sensitivity readers and culture consultants. I think that's such a good idea that you are not assuming that and you're not assuming that you can just read something and know, that you're actually properly engaging at this process with people who can, because not only is that really positive approach to the situation, but it's also a way of engaging people who are so often not engaged and are so often excluded from these things. So it means that, you know, when you go to sale, you can say this is a truly diverse game, not just in its design, but in the process of getting it from concept to creation. I think that's a really positive thing that you're doing. And it's so nice to hear about that, and I love to see a cat.
You can see nothing but cat at the moment. All cat.
It looks like a fake cat.
There's a mill behind there somewhere. Oh no,
Oh.
it real.
She likes to get involved.
I was
So
thinking
there
about
are.
it. No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say there are some characters where you can't really do that. So this one, there you go. It's probably zoomed in. So she's from approximately 4,000 years ago.
Ah.
Can't really have cultural consultants there, you know. So she's Mill, you say her name.
Enhudwana.
Enhudwana, that's it. I'm a bit like I can't remember where to put the emphasis on there. You know, but she is like the first named author, and it's like that is really cool. But of course, you know, but that's 4 and a bit thousand years ago. That's a real, you know, that's some history which I never got taught.
I was just thinking of. I think with feminism we get tricked into second guessing ourselves very, very quickly. They're thinking that, I'm making a black character, and then just agonizing over every single detail about it. But then it made me think that there are millions of films about incredibly flawed historical figures. Did you, when you were looking for your heroines in this game, did you include people that had sort of a darker side to their history, or did you just stick with ones that were like mainly positive?
We started with like a list of like, I want to say over 200, and we threw it out to our socials quite a lot to say, you know, who do you think should be involved in this game? You know, which characters should we represent? And then we really had to kind of whittle it down. And, you know, so we're going through this list, and every so often you come across a character and you go, oh, she did some amazing things, but also she kept loads of slaves. So maybe let's like not have her. So there were some characters that we sort of had to go, that's not, you know, it might have been fine at the time, but actually that's not the sort of character that we want to be kind of idolizing and using as a role model nowadays. You know, despite their amazing achievements, you know, there's, and, you know, we didn't need 200 characters. So, you know, it was get rid of some.
Save it for your expansion packs.
Yeah.
Yes, the buyable drop boxes.
Yeah.
Jem and Caroline, I am basically a noob at board games. I've always been video games. Have you seen, what is the representation like in your experience of board games? Does it compare to what Dissent Games are making?
I mean, it's shockingly poor general, and I'm sure Jem will say the same, but Jem tends to play more family-friendly games, so I think it's probably fair to say then, just like, you know, I most of my board gaming is done with my brother, who, as we know, is some a slightly evil, dark character in this. I describe him. And, you know, to be fair, most of the games that we play don't really have people in them, in the sense that, like, you know, if you think about something like Agricola Caverna, that series, you know, that's the closest I get to people most of the time with dwarves. And I'm told that female dwarves have beards, so therefore it's all one and the same, and it doesn't really matter. But most of the games these days, they just don't. When they do rarely have people represented, it is always men. I love Caverna. Trust me, I'm not.
Great, isn't it?
It's such a good game, and then it gets brilliant. But the thing I'm playing most at the moment, which is like what I'm really loving, is the fact that it was, of course, designed by a woman, Elizabeth Hargraves, is Wingspan, and I have developed a Wingspan addiction, because I haven't had the internet, and I've got the digital version as well as the hard copy version. And the thing about Wingspan is it's exactly the kind of concept that if you went up to the board game nerds at Board Game Geek and said, we're going to make a game about birds and about bird spotting, where you have to know a lot about the nature of the birds and the type of nest they have and where they live. Everyone would have got, nobody's going to play that. Nobody's going to want to play that. It's got nothing to do with killing or stabbing. Nobody's going to like that at all. And it's huge. It's so popular. And so I think that's the thing, is unless people go out and make these games, then there's a sort of assumption that there's no demand for it. But absolutely, they're brilliant. They're wonderful.
How about you, Jen?
We're playing Pandemic in our house at the moment. I'm playing it with my husband and my mum, and that has quite good representation. Actually, it's quite a nice gender split, and also there's people from all sort of race backgrounds and everything. So that's kind of that. Well, it's Pandemic Legacy, so you just keep getting new characters, which is awesome. But yeah, most games we play just have meeples. They don't have peoples. So yeah, I think it's. I played a really good game called Sleeping Queens with my daughter, which was a card game, which was awesome, and I really liked that. Although they were still sort of princessy queens, but they were quite kick-ass in their own little quirky ways and things like that. So yeah, no, I think when we did our board game chat, we did talk about that in more detail. And one of the things that came up was that, so few of the games in the top 10 list or whatever I was looking at the time even had women on the front of the box. I mean, It was, and when they did, they were so, stereotypical. So it wasn't, it was quite, I remember that being quite a depressing research session.
I was just thinking about, I've also played a lot of Arkham Horror, the living card game version, which is, so it's, again, it's that you have your character, it's a deck building game. And the female characters in that are in that slightly awkward area where, yes, okay, they're kick-ass and, they're a bit stabby or they're a bit shooty, but they tend to fall into those same tropes. So the most violent stabby one is also mad and suffering from serious mental health problems, and that's why she's quite stabby. And it's like, all right, okay, but that's not the only reason, and the male characters tend to be a lot cooler. Like, they've got a hat and a dark, interesting past, whereas the women
not a hat. You're cool if you've got a hat.
Clearly, to me, that's all you need to be cool. It's just a Stetson. But the female characters do tend to be very stereotypical tropes, and it's a shame because, again, it's a really good game that's sort of got complexity of character of the male characters. But I just feel like nobody ever stopped and thought, maybe women aren't all just these standard tropes. But
there's always a the skin deep representation, which like the massive corporations try and use to make money
with high heels. They often have those nice little 1940s outfits.
They always
absolutely.
And what we really want is because there are so many stories to be told, and the reason we see so many tropes about women is because they're usually men making them probably don't think women are interesting. They're only there to be plot points. How early on did you decide it was going to be? Was it always going to be historical and fiction, or was it going to be? Did you think you were going to only do one?
Both, I think. Yeah. Just checking. Can you hear me? Because I know that I'm freezing an awful lot. Well, maybe I'm not.
It's not for us.
Hey, excellent. In that case, that's fine. So I think. So the original two I was actually thinking about. One of which I couldn't use because it's too late. So I was thinking about Lucy from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, with Ada Lovelace. So I think that was like my original thought from way back when. So of course, that is a fictional one with a historical one. Now, actually, C.S. Lewis is slightly too late to be properly out of copyright, although there are all sorts of difficult things there with the fact that there have been numerous films made of it, and films often go out of copyright slightly earlier than books. So, there's all sorts of complications. But yeah, so I think it was that was the idea, that it would be the books, but half of them would be non-fiction books, essentially. They'd be historical books.
I think it was about kind of making sure that people could see that these characters were real people and that it was like achievable. It's great that there are so many kind of fictional role models, but actually having kind of real women that you kind of can look up to and go, wow, even 100 years ago or 4,000 years ago, women were capable of doing these things, but we've just never heard about it. Like you've really got to dig deep to find out about some of these people. And so, like we've learned loads about loads of really interesting characters that we've never heard of before.
That we've never heard about
it. Yeah. We like Enheduanna, for instance, I'd never heard of until we started doing this. Loads of others, I think, as well.
Sometimes I was just thinking, sometimes it's that we living here in the UK haven't heard about them, so thinking about Nzinga. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know who Nzinga is. I'm going to have to be horribly ignorant now.
Queen Nzinga was a queen of I want to say
what's now present-day Angola.
Present-day Angola.
It's now present-day Angola.
If I can find her card.
And it was, looking at the dates here, because I went through the dates, 1583 to 1663. Wow. Now, actually, she's quite a good example of somebody who, because she was a queen, during a period when, the Portuguese were taking over Angola, she is a role model, but she's also, she made deals with the Portuguese. She had diplomatic deals with them. There are things where it's like, okay, was that the right decision in the long run? Probably most of them were. A few of them you're like, you can't really see what else she would have done. She's most famous for going and meeting the Portuguese leaders. And, well, not most famous, but one of the, the stories told is that she went to meet the Portuguese leaders. They had provided chairs for themselves, but not a chair for her. So one of her servants came and knelt down so she could use him as a chair, so she could be on the same footing as all of the, the Portuguese leaders who she was supposedly negotiating with. And, it's like, actually, she was like, yeah, I am just as good as you lot. This is my team. They're going to back me up. They have my back. We're going to negotiate with you properly. And it's like, that's brilliant. There are statues of her, but of course, we in the UK don't know very much about her because, she's one of those women who it hasn't. The fame of white men spreads easily. The fame of brilliant black women doesn't spread as easily.
Absolutely. And also just mad because it's the same time period as we've got a very famous queen on the throne of England.
Yeah.
So you'd assume almost somewhere. I mean, I studied Tudor history for A-level. And I didn't pay that much attention, but you feel like it's the sort of thing that teachers could be talking about to try and get you interested. Anyway, sorry.
I think that's
absolutely.
It. Like, world history is very rare that we come across that in UK schools, I think. I certainly did a lot of UK history and Europe, bit of Russia, bit of Tsar Nicholas and all that, but I know very little about kind of Native Americans or Africa history or anything like that.
Yeah,
but isn't
Chinese history, for example?
Yeah,
there were. So I specifically went and read the four. What are generally known as the four cornerstone Chinese texts. So, Journey to the West, The Dream of the Red Chamber, went and read them and was like, oh, these are really interesting. And they are the, they take the the place that we have, perhaps in our, literary history of something like, Pride and Prejudice or Great Expectations. For example, when you go into Tesco to buy costumes for World Book Day of Matilda, she's carrying a copy of Great Expectations. Just, that's the place it has in our sort of literary canon. And these are books with exactly the same value, but of course we don't get them that much. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting. That's what I want to dig into. What is there in somebody else's culture where they're like, hey, yes, we see your Elizabeth Bennet and we will raise you one Wang X Fen or, something like that. And it's like, yeah, excellent, brilliant. Who are they?
We should get, I think, particularly England and European culture. We love the fact that we had an empire, but we don't like to talk about how we got that empire. Mm-hmm. And that's why we so rarely hear about Africa and Native Americans and South America, because Europe completely pillaged and just raised theirs, and we don't hear those stories.
Yeah, so much erasure of those kinds of, like you say, the British Empire countries. There are people that don't know their own cultural history because it's been erased by white people coming in and stomping all over it, basically. And so sometimes it's really hard to kind of find those cultural icons, because even the people from those cultures don't know who they are, because it's been lost. The oral tradition has been lost over the generations, and all the books were burned, for instance, or there's no kind of record of so many of these people. It's so minimal that unless you really go hunting for it, it's really difficult to find.
Yeah, it's pretty much the mirror image of women's representation, because in order for the patriarchal leadership, the ones at the top of these creative industries, in order for them to truly respect women's stories, they would have to look at themselves and look at the patriarchy and look at the horrors that are inflicted upon women, the fact that women exist in perpetual fear of male violence. That should be the only thing that people talk about until that isn't the way it is anymore.
I particularly like when you Google women's history, you do get all these timelines and things which basically suggest that there was no women's history before the 19th century. That women did nothing before the 19th century. They didn't exist.
Yeah.
That's something that really annoys me. This sense that pre-Victorian, women's history was worse. Now, think about voting. Hang on a moment. There's something about voting that's really important here, because we tend to think about the fact that women didn't get the vote in this country until 1918. That isn't true. I mean, for a start, it's not true about all the stuff around, which women got the vote and, how the franchise was expanded because it was only women over 30. But it's also not true because, and going back to something like Pride and Prejudice, you remember Pride and Prejudice? Remember that there's Lady Catherine de Bourgh in there. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, rich old widow, huge property owner. Now, that book was written before the 1832 Reform Act. Catherine de Bourgh could vote. It's not said in the book, but it is absolutely the case that, she would have been able to vote. She might not have taken that vote, but it's like, actually, the Victorians made things a huge amount worse for women. It wasn't that, things were even worse before that. It's that they, trampled on a whole load of women's rights.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, but we see that across the board. We see that in the church as well. I mean, if you go back to sort of Celtic Christianity, there were plenty of female priests around then, and it was totally undermined as we went through history. So throughout history, we have examples of women who are, merrily going about their business and having an equal share in society. And slowly over time, that share has been eroded. And I think that's one of the reasons why, for me, feminism is still a very current issue, because we've seen it eroded over time. So we need to keep being vigilant about it. We're not necessarily on a road to everything is just always going to get better. And we have to keep fighting to ensure that we are pushing back against this and educating the next generation in all these amazing women who did all these amazing things, so that they know that they can too. So I think, games like this is excellent for that.
I think you just made me think that the erasure of women. You're completely right that the impression you're given is that women just did nothing before for the last couple of thousand years, and that it's since then it's just been a constant upwards positive hooray progress for women's rights, when the truth is that women's rights have ebbed and flowed throughout history. It wasn't just the worst it's been at the start and then just been getting better. It's a thing like, it's just the way the world is. No, it's the way men have made the world. And I feel like, again, bringing back to Encanto, I haven't seen it because I am not emotionally stable enough for Disney films. I'm too sensitive. And
just be like me and just cry the whole way through. That's what I do. My daughter's so entertained by it because she looks over at me, whatever we're watching, and I'm usually like just sobbing. She just laughs and gets on with it.
Whereas luckily I'm an emotionless husk, so I'm fine, don't worry.
Yeah, me too.
But even emotionless husks can be ambitious, which brings me on to my next question, which is, what are your ambitions in terms of your game development? Is this the only game you want to make? Is there more things you want to make?
I guess, Jess is obviously, she's already made a game, making Disarm the Base, which was kickstarted, I want to say 2018. And I suppose, from my perspective, it was very exciting, to make a game in the first place, and I've had a lovely time making a game, and I would totally be up for making another one. But I think it's about having the right idea. You can't just kind of go, oh well, that's that game done, right, what's the next one? Kind of, I think I'm one of those people who sort of has to wait for inspiration to strike and go, oh, actually that would be a great thing to do as a game. Jess makes games all the time. She's been making roll and color games for game on a greetings card. So there was a Christmas one that went out, and there's a Valentine's one going out now, and all the rules are on the back of the greetings card. So we've got, I think, 3 different games on greetings cards now from that Jess has made. So yeah, Jess is the one that keeps making games, and I'm the one that kind of dips in and out and occasionally goes, oh, that will make a nice game. I've done a lot of live games, so a lot of sort of escape room game design and stuff like that. And a couple of years ago, I made a VR game that was sort of a VR and live escape room challenge thing, where some of the clues were in the live room and some of them were in the VR headset, and you had to work together to solve the puzzles. So yeah, my making of games, it extends beyond just board games, I suppose.
Sorry, we've got a slight. Sorry, Mill, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I was just going to say, because we've got a slightly odd situation where Jess can't hear us right now, but we can hear her, and I've told her what the question is in the chat, so she's going to answer when I tell her to, which I'm going to type now. Jess,
now.
Hello. So I can hear the sound trying to catch up at the moment, which is actually super confusing. So I'm actually just going to mute myself now and then try and come back in.
fair enough. Okay, in which case, Mel, tell me more about escape rooms, please, because I have a desperate need. I've always wanted to do an escape room. I've never found any people willing to do it with me, because to me, my mind, it's like the Crystal Maze. Yay!
Yeah.
Am I back?
Can you hear her? I was just asking Mel about escape rooms, so that's
all.
Do an escape room. Yes, absolutely. 100% do an escape room. If you like games, you'll love escape rooms. That's,
I love escape rooms. rooms. I haven't been in one for ages and ages. They seem like they'd be really hard to make, though.
Nah, it's fine.
Mill's confidence is great.
My first one that I made was in 2016, which was a Frankenstein themed escape room that we made for one of the local science festivals, and then we remade it in like several different versions. So there's about 5 different versions of that one going out. So there was like a more horror version, and then there was one that we did for the Science Museum in London that was kind of more ethics based. So yeah, there's a lot of different versions of that one. I did a Christmas one, which was about Santa's trousers got shrunk in the wash, and you had to put them in the magic embiggening machine and add the fairy dust and say the magic words, and then you could make the trousers big again, obviously. And then there was, as I say, the VR one, which was based on an H.P. Lovecraft short story called Under the Pyramids, about Harry Houdini getting trapped in an ancient Egyptian tomb. So yeah, they're fine.
This is the great thing. This is the great thing, that we've got, skills coming from all sorts of directions. So Mill's got this fantastic theatre background, and I'm like, wow, how did you do these things? She's like, yeah, I did this, and this, and I'm like, wow, okay, really great. But it's all these different skills that working as a team is really useful. There's also lots of things to do with So the things we've been using to do the art, so I've been doing some of the background art, and it's like, this is a whole new thing for me. And, we've been using Procreate as the software. And I'm like, this is a whole new thing, which, this time last year, I had no idea about it. Now I have an iPencil, and, I feel like I'm an expert now.
And I still have no idea about it.
It's just fantastic
to other people.
I've discovered the joys of working with a good team, because I think everyone has tremendous, the vast majority of their experiences are with poor teams. But when you find a good team, it feels really good. The only way I've
talking about us, Matt, are you? Talking about us?
Yes. I've discovered that particularly with art, I've commissioned a few art things for some projects, which brings me round to the question of funding, because I have to raise money and then I need to give it, and then you have no idea if you're going to make any money back. How did you did it cost much money? I don't know how much money it costs to make a board game, and how did you raise this money?
There's a lot of working for free at the moment and hoping that we crowdfund. There was a little bit of money in the pot already from left over from Disarm the Base and from Jess's lovely Games on Greetings cards that are available on Etsy.
Where's a game on a greetings card? Here we go. Here's a game on a greetings card. I have balance. So there are a few things that have been. Firstly, we haven't got most of the money yet. So we obviously need to kickstart this for it to actually work properly. We've put out some money, not a huge amount, but when you're thinking about, going to conventions, it's, cost, something like £100, to get a stand at the convention, for the weekend. And then you've got to take things along, and then you buy a banner, and, that's another sort of.
And then you've got to buy a train ticket. And
then you've got to buy a train ticket, etc. And it all adds up, and then these prototypes, these prototypes, which are lovely, and we needed to have, proper prototypes made with, proper tiles, which are, nicely cut and everything. Those were about 25 quid each or something, which is obviously way more than you'd pay for a normal board game, but that's because, we made 15 of them instead of,
a million.
Instead of 500. Yeah, exactly. So in order to actually, in order for this to work properly, we really need to be making about, 500. We really need to be, we need to be raising probably about £10,000, which is a huge
Minimum.
amount.
Yeah,
when you think about it, in order for it to actually work properly. For Disarm the Base, which is this one, then that actually worked out once you added in all of the shipping costs and the different parts, because it came with a little cloth bag, for example, and then I also got the instructions printed somewhere else because that gave me more time to write the instructions. These are the secrets that they don't tell you anywhere else, folks. You get the instructions printed closer to home, so you get an extra month to write them. Not for Library Labyrinth. Those are actually done. Yay!
Nice.
Because it's because it's Mill's job. So,
but it's all these little bits of the board game that really make it. Like, that. I mean, when I got my physical copy of Wingspan finally, and having actual eggs to play with and having the bird feeder to put stuff in, it's like that's one of the joys of a board game is a well-made tile and when you said a little bag 100%. There for Disarm the Base. I was like, I want to play it now.
Yeah, you have to have all those bits, don't you?
There's something about kind of the tactile nature of a board game, I think.
Absolutely,
is a big part of it. And we've been really conscious to make ours plastic free as well, so everything is wood and card and paper.
Well done.
So,
no little minis. Minis can be really nice, but they're also, it's like that's just extra stuff. And actually, for the type of audience we're going for, this isn't a minis heavy game. There are people who are really into their minis, and this is like, actually, this isn't that game. But yeah,
What's a mini?
Little plastic character.
Oh, a miniature.
Yeah. So like the World of Warcraft things. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, they're really popular in dungeon crawlers, which this started out as a sort of a dungeon crawler, and then it sort of went diceless. We hadn't really, the sort of the first thoughts might have had dice, and then it was like, no, it's going to be sort of a set collection type thing. It's going to be a sort of dungeon crawler with set collection, but it's kind of moved every step of the way a bit further away from dungeon crawler. So it's basically a board game with some strong dungeon crawler elements rather than an actual dungeon crawler, if that makes sense.
I think the other thing that's really nice about using the meeples to represent the players rather than using like a specific character is that then you can like see yourself in it. It's not, it's whoever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be that character that we've said, you've got to be one of these 4 people. You can be the yellow meeple, and the yellow meeple can be anybody. It can be you, and that's the point, is that you play as you, and these amazing women are helping you. They're your team. So you don't play as the characters, you play as you, and you can achieve those things, rather than going, oh, this character that I'm just playing for half an hour can achieve those things.
It is a classic misrepresentation problem where there is, when there are miniatures, that there will be one female, there will be 5 male and 1 female, and you have to choose that one female one as the only option you have. I think there was a board game, it's quite a good, cool board game, Arabian Nights, where you sort of go around and you get a little bit of the story and you get a lot of story out of it. But I think, yes, I had the choice of being Scheherazade and I think that was it, actually. It was just there was no female characters to play as.
We have Scheherazade in the game, so
we do. She brings storytelling as a skill, which I think is a good skill. Storytelling, I think, is so it's one of the expertise skills, which is particularly good for battling the Jabberwocky. Nicely enough.
Good plan.
We're just coming up to our final 5 minutes. We normally end with a wild card question. But before we do that, is there anything any questions that I haven't asked that you'd like to answer that you wish I had?
Is there a link to your crowdfunder? Have we got that already? Sorry, I've been out of the loop.
That's a good point. Not only crowdfunders, we've put it up on Screen Top. So you can go and try out this game before you actually pledge for it. So yeah, we've basically said, okay, we want people to come and pledge for it, but this is something where we're going out. The art isn't quite complete, but we've put it up on Screen Top right now, so you can go and have a look. You can play test for yourself. You can be like, yeah, here it is. So yeah.
Cool.
I think that might have to be a bonus round, mightn't it, for us?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
You can,
If we can work the tech for that. I wanted to ask actually about the gender split between because when I looked at the website, obviously like the characters are female that support your efforts, but a lot of the baddies, I'm using my words, baddies, in these stories from this era tend to be male or masculine, and how I'm not ascribing any kind of quality statement to this, but how have you squared that? Because you've got sort of like the women fighting the men potentially.
It's actually a really interesting question, because I think the only one of our terrors that is gendered is Dracula.
No, actually, hang on. No,
there's not very many.
Frankenstein.
We've got Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, Jekyll and Hyde, yeah.
So we don't have Frankenstein, but we do have Jekyll and Hyde. We do have Grendel's mother.
Yeah.
So Grendel's mother obviously is specifically female. Dracula is specifically male. Jekyll and Hyde, of course, is specifically male. But then we've got quite a lot who you might assume, such as the big bad wolf. And there's definitely, or the Minotaur. I mean, actually, no, the Minotaur is male, I think.
Yes.
He's the son of the king.
Yeah.
So yes, so we do.
We've also got really kind of non-gendered things, like we've got the basilisk and the kraken, and
I also the basilisks and krakens as just being male. I don't know how I expect them to have children.
Scylla and Charybdis, they're female.
Baby kraken.
Yes.
Charybdis is female in as much as a whirlpool can be female.
She was originally female before she got turned into a whirlpool.
But we've been really conscious of not including characters like the Wicked Witch of the West, or or Baba Yaga, for instance, because we wanted to kind of avoid those. The traditional witch that was kind of a lot of the time was just this misunderstood woman from the community who maybe didn't get married or couldn't have children, or
wore trousers.
Exactly.
Oh, I know.
We've been really conscious of not having those characters specifically, because, and I think Medusa, traditionally seen as a monster character, is actually one of our heroines.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. So you can have Medusa.
I like Medusa.
Because she was cursed to be that thing. It wasn't who she was. So
that's the point. These stories are so interesting. They're not just skin deep. We'll start a wild card round, Caroline, because you've got to rush off. We'll put you first. So you can just quickly answer. So this wild card is split into two halves. One half is I'm going to ask the Game the System people what one villain and one heroine they would want to put into this game. And then Mill and Jess, I'm going to ask what are your favourite hero and villains from the games. Caroline.
Okay, so hero-wise, and as I say, I've not had the internet for 2 months, so I'm sorry I haven't checked, and I don't know if she's already in your game. But I'm going to be so stereotypically middle-class 40-year-old here and say Anne of Green Gables. No, Anne of Green Gables, who was just, I'm sorry, growing up, Anne of Green Gables was the strongest woman in a book to me. She was awesome. She also insisted on having an E on the end of her name. Anne is my middle name and it's spelt with an E, and I identified very strongly with that struggle. So definitely it would be Anne of Green Gables. Is she in?
She's in. Yes. She's one of them, yeah.
I'm very happy to hear that. I have spent the last 2 hours trying to think of what villain I would put in, and genuinely I can't. I'm like, I don't know why, because I just feel people are too complex to just be villains, and obviously I should just not faffing around with that and just going for a proper fictional villain and just going through with it. But I can't. and it's really struggled with it. I got as far as one of the sort of European monarchs during the Renaissance, and then thought, I'm overthinking this right now. So, Donald Trump, I guess.
He's not out of copyright, unfortunately.
Well, I know. I was like, this will be before 1920.
If only someone had killed him 70 years ago, we'd all be in a much better place.
Anyway, so I am going to shoot off before you all answer that, but I cannot wait to play your game. So thank you very much. It was lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. See you soon, Caroline. Cool. Next, I think we'll go with Jess. What's your favourite hero and villain?
Oh, so my favourite of the characters in there is Torfrida, who's from Hereward the Wake. And that is a incredibly random book. And not a character that most people will know. In fact, I think there's only one person who's ever gone, oh, yes, I know who she is. So she's one of the ones I'm like, oh, that's very random. But, Hereward the Wake is about one of the last Saxons. One of the last Celts here in England, when the Saxons are invading. So Torfrida is the main female character on there. And she's definitely a witch, but she's a good witch. And this is a book where, it's like, she's a witch, but she's a saint at the same time. So you've got all of this juxtaposition where she's like, yes, I am going to stand on this tower and I'm going to beat back the armies with my incredibly saintly magic. Obviously, it's really saintly, despite the fact that there's fire and lightning and, my black hair is floating out behind me. But I'm a saint, I promise. And it's just that great juxtaposition. So I love it. Torfrida is my favorite character in there, I think. And my favorite villain, well, I'm going to go with some of the ones which are not the people, but the obstacles. So there's the Pit and the Pendulum in there, which is as one, and I'm like, yeah, because I really loved, the Edgar Allan Poe stories when I was a teenager. That was the sort of teenager I was. So I'm like, yes, Pit and the Pendulum, real obstacles to get past.
Pit and Pendulum is also a wonderful heavy metal bar in Nottingham. With magic bookshelves that lead you to the toilets, and 7 deadly sins and 7 heavenly virtues of cocktails.
I want to go there.
I need to go there. My 17-year-old self would have loved that. In fact, my 17-year-old self wouldn't have been served. My 18-year-old self would have loved it.
It was the first time I realised that some people have milk in cocktails.
Mm-hmm.
That made me go, mind blown. I will go next. I've learned. Have any of you heard of a podcast called The Dollop? It's an American history podcast done by 2 comedians, and they did one about a woman called Stagecoach Mary. She's a black woman born in 1832. Born a slave. When she was freed after the Civil War, so she's in her 40s, she was 6 foot tall and 200 pounds. That's 90 kilograms. So she was a big, powerful woman. And when she was joined a convent and had like a 20-year lesbian relationship with one of the nuns there. And when she was in her 60s, she started being a mail carrier through like the dangerous Wild West. So like everything, like wolves and bandits and thieves and everything. And she would just have tons of guns and shoot them off. And if the snow was too high, she would carry the sacks of mail on her back because she was so awesome. And she just spent her 60s and 70s getting shit-faced. And she was the only woman allowed to drink in men-only saloons. That was an ordinance given by the governor because she was such a badass. And there was a standing bet that any man who could take a punch from her and stay standing, they'd get a free drink or something. So
she sounds amazing.
So just mind-blowingly awesome, and just how is there? Oh yeah, they're another again a representation problem. There is a film being made about them, but the actress they've chosen to play her. Do you know who Zazie Beetz is?
No.
Probably recognise her. She's like very, very slim and very light skinned, whereas Stagecoach Mary was very dark skinned. And that seems to, there's another one of those things that in media, they hate dark skinned black people. They never put dark skinned black people in. So it's, oh, look, we've got black people. But then you're choosing not to use the dark skin because of something you don't think anyone's going to want to see it. So again, we take one step forward and then you realise, oh, it was actually a tiny step forward. But it's better than nothing, and then that's how we keep on building that pressure. But the bad guy, there's a monster called Toonback. It's not necessarily a monster. It's an Eskimo sort of god spirit, and it takes the form of this massive polar bear that eats souls. So when it's a TV show called The Terror, which is an absolute masterpiece about two expeditions that got lost in the Arctic, and they were getting so the expeditions were real, but the terror is like a fictional thing of all what could have happened. And this like the Toonback is hunting them down because they're defiling the Arctic, and their souls are poisoning it. So again, that feeds into your sort of the genderless sort of force of like this malevolent force. So I'm so glad this game came up, because it's given me the opportunity to look into these stories and think of how they might fit in this library. Jen, how about you?
Well, I don't know. There's so many people. I'm thinking I'd quite like to see Katniss from the Hunger Games. I appreciate that that's not out of copyright at all, probably. Just because she is a genuinely kick-ass character, and I think that it would be nice to have somebody who can wield a sword or something in there as well. And I quite like that.
Well, there are plenty that can wield swords.
And
This is all about her bow.
That is true. She is about her bow. She's actually a giant child-sized cat in my house. So, you know, she can be whatever she wants to be. And I don't. Yeah, I've struggled with the you know, the villain, or villainess, or villainy, I don't know, villainish. And I think the thing is the older that I've got, the less sort of people have scared me, and the more things scare me. So I feel like it would be, you know, like Time or something like that. I would like to see, you know, bleak. Like so you're challenging yourself against time. I'm not quite sure how Katniss can do that with a bow or a sword or whatever she happens to find on the floor. But yeah, I think those would be my two.
It's actually, it only just struck me that the baddies are called terrors in the game, which means that something doesn't have to be evil to be scary. So this Toonback thing it's technically a god creature, but it's terrifying to the men who are fighting it. So yeah, that struck me. It's a very potent, deliberate choice to call them terrors.
It is.
Mill, how about your favourites?
In terms of characters, one that we found out about that I absolutely love, that I knew nothing about before, was the Chevalier d'Eon, who was a French spy in the late 18th, early 19th century. And she lived the first half of her life as a man and the second half of her life as a woman. And so she's one of the trans characters that we've got in the game, and I just find her absolutely fascinating. And I knew absolutely nothing about her before, and yeah, you don't really think of like trans representation in that sort of time period. It feels weirdly like a new thing, or like a thing that's been around in like other cultures maybe, but hasn't kind of made its way to Europe until very recently. But actually there was a lot of trans people, and
it was much more common, wasn't it?
One of those erasure things, I think, that and so I found out about her and I was like, she's amazing, she's going in. So yeah, love her. And in terms of monsters, again, I think it's the ones which are a bit more abstract that I like. So I spoke earlier about anxiety being one of the terrors, but I think I'm going to go with the Reichenbach Falls as my favorite, because I just love the idea that there's a waterfall in a library that's escaped from its book, and it's just like spilling water everywhere. I don't know. I just love the idea. Oh, there's the Chevalier Daon that Jess was pointing out.
Yeah, that feels like a risky thing to have in a library.
Yeah. We did a playthrough once with one of our friends who's done a lot of playtesting, and she found it so funny, this idea that there was this waterfall in a library that you were trying to capture somehow. It's those sort of like absurdities in this game that I really love, that when you actually sort of sit back and look at what you're doing, you go, but what? why have I got Mary Seacole teaming up with Alice in Wonderland to capture a waterfall? What's going on?
That sounds like a perfect combination of people actually for that job.
Of the things that I really love about this game is that there's just these absurd matchups, and yeah, the Reichenbach Falls is the one that just makes me laugh the most.
We talk often about how anything could be made fun. So like with women's esports, for example, people watch people play Scrabble. Thousands and thousands of people are riveted by that. You just need the will to make it happen, which is why the representation is so lacking, because the mainly straight white cis men with all the power only care about a very small amount of thing. It struck me recently that 99% of media is about straight white men saving the world, middle-aged white men saving the world, and it's just a coincidence that all of them are made by straight middle-aged white men. And that's hopefully for stuff like Encanto and this, we're moving in the right direction.
History is written by the victors, so,
Yeah, and also you made a fantastic point about LGBT plus people in history, because we are another thing we are fed is that gay people are new, trans people are new. This is a new weird thing when they've existed throughout history.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah,
and it's none of history has just happened. It has been executed by the patriarchy, which that's why we started Gaming the Systems, because we want to bring that way to light of it now. One I think we've all answered. Excellent. Before we do our very final surprise thing, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I guess just that we've got a pre-launch page on Kickstarter. You can search Library Labyrinth, we'll come up, and you can sign up to be notified when we launch. We're on all the usual socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think Twitter and Instagram, we're at Descent Games. Facebook, we have a page called Descent Games, and we have a group called Library Labyrinth, which is specifically for Library Labyrinth. So come and find us, say hello.
Cool, and we'll put all of your links in our bio as well. The very last thing, Gaming the System, we have something called the FemPat Index, which is the index where we can put where we think games go in terms of moving us towards a feminist utopia or into patriarchal progression. I think we can probably all agree that Library Labyrinth is sending us very comfortably into the feminist utopia direction.
Sounds good.
I think so.
Awesome. So yes,
Cool.
that's where it will be enshrined there. And with that, we'll bring our episode to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Mill and Jess, that was fabulous and fascinating, and we're so excited for you and your game. We will have the Library Labyrinth details in our bio for a while. We have tons and tons of stuff on YouTube and on any podcasting network you may use. The main thing we want at the start of this new year is tell us what you want to see. We want comments. Comment wherever you can find us and tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see, and we will do our best to make it so. And so until next time, we will see you every Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.